Somewhere along the way, reading got quietly assigned two roles. Either it is something you do for pleasure, light, optional, decorative, or it becomes something you reach for when things are falling apart. And that second version is usually where the word bibliotherapy shows up for most people. Crisis reading, recovery reading, the I cannot think straight, so I will open a book and hope it studies something kind of reading. But most of life is not crisis, most of life is the in between. The middle heavy days, the slightly unmotivated mornings, the weeks where nothing is technically wrong but nothing feels fully aligned either. And that is where bibliotherapy actually lives most of the time. Not in the dramatic moments, but in the ordinary ones. Bibliotherapy, in its simplest sense, is the intentional use of reading, sometimes writing, to support emotional and cognitive life. That definition gets used a lot, but what matters more is what it looks like in practice when you remove the assumption that something has to be wrong for it to matter. Because most people already use books this way without naming it. You reread familiar novels when your mind feels noisy. You reach for essays when you cannot tolerate plot but still want language. You open poetry when everything feels like too much structure. None of that requires a crisis, it just requires attention, and that is really the shift. Bibliotherapy is not about escalating emotional need. It is about noticing emotional state earlier and responding to it with something that actually matches it. Not everything is for fixing, some things are for tuning. Let me put it another way. A crisis is when you finally notice the noise is too loud. Bibliotherapy is what you use when you start noticing the noise is building. There's a difference in timing, and timing changes everything. Most of the reading culture online still leans heavily toward two extremes. Either books as productivity, lists, goals, reading challenges, or books as escape. Neither of those is wrong, but both miss the quieter function reading can serve in daily life. Maintenance, not transformation, not escape, but maintenance. I once read that reading is a means of living more fully in one's own consciousness. Not escaping it, not optimizing it, living inside it more clearly. That is closer to what bibliotherapy actually looks like on an ordinary day. It is not dramatic, it is often just noticing that you're slightly scattered and choosing a text that slows that scattering down instead of accelerating it. Sometimes that means rereading something you already know. Sometimes it means reading something shorter than your attention span wants to admit. Sometimes it means not finishing a book at all. And this is where people usually overcomplicate it. Bibliotherapy is not about completion, it is about contact. Contact with attention, contact with language, contact with your own internal state through something external enough to reflect it back at you. There is a reason literature works here in a way that advice often does not. Advice assumes a problem with a solution. Literature assumes an experience that might not need fixing, just witnessing. And witnessing is often enough. Not always, but often. I want to be careful here because this is also where misunderstandings happen. Bibliotherapy is not a replacement for mental health care. When someone needs clinical support, it is not a cure, it is not a substitute. What it is, more quietly, is a way of staying in conversation with yourself before things become unmanageable. Most people think of reading as something that happens after life is organized. Bibliotherapy suggests the opposite. Reading can be part of how you organize life while it is happening, not in a controlling way, more like noticing the weather before you step outside. Some days you need something dense and structured, some days you need something that barely asks anything of you. Some days you need language that does not demand interpretation at all. This is not personality-based reading, it is state-based reading. And once you start noticing that distinction, the entire idea of what should I read next becomes less abstract and more grounded. You stop asking for the best book, you start asking for the right pressure of book. Because books have pressure. Some press inward, some hold you at a distance, some mirror too closely, some barely touch you at all. Bibliotherapy is essentially the practice of noticing that pressure and adjusting it deliberately, not automatically, deliberately. And over time, that changes the way reading sits in your life. It stops being an activity you schedule, it becomes something closer to a responsive system, not a habit, a conversation. And I think that is the point most people miss when they first hear the word. They imagine something formal, clinical, structured in a way that feels distant from actual reading life. But in practice, it is much closer to what serious readers have always done informally. Choosing books not just for interest, but for timing, for need, for the version of yourself that is currently doing the reading. So no, you do not need a crisis for bibliotherapy to matter. In fact, if you only reach for books in crisis, you're missing most of what they can actually do. The quieter work happens earlier, in the middle of things, when life is not dramatic enough to name but not light enough to ignore. That is where reading does its most useful work, and most of it does not look like healing. It just looks like continuing